it does, I don't care which way you go with it, but it is important. If your spirituality is such that it's a very solemn occasion, then it must have been grand and solemn, of which then God came down and gave them this gift of prophecy. Or if you're more, I don't know, since it was in a tent, if you're more of this kind of the southern revival tent type, then it could have been kind of more raucous and singing and more charismatic, and that's fine, because nonetheless, God's Spirit came down, and that was important. And so something wonderful and mysterious happened at that moment for those people in that tent. And it was important to them. Of course it was. And if we'd have been part of it, it would have been the same thing for us. Anytime that we're called to something important, it would be special for us. In other words, like the Pope being here now, can you imagine just having one of these special tickets you see just to be in the Pope's presence? And when we're in that presence, no doubt we will feel the grace of God and something kind of special that's happened to us. The apostles have been going and traveling with Jesus for quite a while now. They have seen Jesus and they've heard his teachings, but they've seen him perform miracles. They've seen him heal the sick, and now they're seeing him drive out demons. So they have been with him, and with that, they've kind of formed this bond with Jesus. They're probably just now getting it and realizing that Jesus now is somebody special. They might not know he's the Son of God yet, but that doesn't matter, not yet. All they know is that obviously Jesus is of God, and God is important in Jesus' life, and so much so that he is kind of passing it on to us. We're learning as we go along. And that's great. Everything I've said so far has been great. And the same thing for us, too. As Christians, we are called, and we are called into the tent, if you will, to share God's glory. And we experience it. And we're here right now. We're in the tent, experiencing God's glory. However, here's the problem. And let me get it out here. Actually, I've got to read something. I don't normally do this in a homily. Because I want to get this right. Exceptions. Exceptions. Exception is a wonderful word, and it is an awful word at the same time. Exception. A person or thing that is excluded from a general statement or does not follow a rule. And here's the problem with exception. Exception is great for me. And it is great for us. Because we're under this one tent right now, we're in us. It's us's. And exception is okay. I have no problem with exception. Exception is always okay when it's about us. Exception about them is another matter. We're so easy to show exception to ourselves and whoever us are. But the moment that a them asks for exception, giving exception to all the themses out there is not so easy. And it requires us to think. And we frown. We do. We frown. When somebody, for us, asks for exception, we listen, and then we just generally smile. And, oh, okay, I get it. And I'm willing to hear why the exception is so important. That's important. Oh, okay, I understand. Oh, yes, that reason is very good. I understand. In this case, there has to be an exception. For all the themses out there, no. There is a rule, and this rule has to be followed. And this rule is important. Therefore, for all you themses, it's not a smile, it's a frown. No. You know, because if I make this one exception here, then it's going to create this, and no, there's just going to be some problems. So we can't really make that exception. Eldad and Medad. We have no idea why they stayed in the camp. Absolutely no idea. All we know is they stayed in the camp. That's all. So, 68 people pile out of the tent. They all go about their business, and they're all kind of, they're grooving with God. And they're with all their tribes. And suddenly, Eldad and Medad seem to be doing the same thing. They seem to be grooving with God and doing everything that we in the tent were doing as well. So, got to go run to Moses. And go to Moses and says, look at these two. They weren't in the tent. And now look at them. They're doing everything that we're doing. And Moses says, well, okay. Yes, they are prophesying for God. I guess they're an exception. I don't know how the rest of the... We really don't know how the rest of the people took that. That's all we know. And we could be nice about it if you want to make this nice. If it makes you feel better, we can always say, well, Eldad and Medad were taking care of their parents. Okay, that makes us all feel good. And therefore, then God gave that exception, then okay, God, we will allow that exception because they were taking care of their parents. Or something like that. Whatever makes you feel good. However, don't sit there with that. What if Eldad and Medad just said, I just don't want to go. I don't want to have anything to do with that. No, I just don't want to do it. I'd rather sit here and do whatever I'm doing. Well, that exception is a little different, isn't it? But God gave them the grace. And He didn't call the 68 people back into the tent to ask their opinion. He passed on His grace, and He didn't care who liked it or who didn't like it. The people, or the apostles with Jesus, were noticing that somebody else was casting out demons. Jesus, stop that person. What are they doing? Who are these people? We don't know anything about them. They're certainly not hanging with us. They haven't been with us. And yet they're doing all of this. And Jesus says, okay, relax. Relax. They have a grace. God's grace is given however God wants it to be given. And if He wants to make exceptions, me and you are not going to do much about it. But we have to accept it. Oh, hard thing to do. Because can themses be good people? Can themses follow God? Or can God give grace to them? And God is saying, absolutely, I can do whatever I want to, I'm God. Absolutely. So, herein lies the problem. We're under this tent, and we've all under the grace of God. It's the themses in our life that are problematic for all of us. And God today is saying, well, you may have a problem. However, I call who I wish to call, and maybe sometimes those themses are doing God's work. And let's be clear here. It's not like they're doing anything they want to. Eldad and Medad were prophesying and doing good works. They were doing good works in God's name. And the person who was getting rid of the demons was doing good works in God's name. So I do have to put that in there. They weren't just doing anything they want. They were helping other human beings. They were doing the good work of God. It's just that some people didn't like it. So, now, What do we do with themses? How do we approach this? And how can we solve the problem of us and them? All right. Well, Jesus helps us. I says, Jesus, help me with the themses so that they can be better people and I can understand them better. And so Jesus says, fine, here we go. If your hand is sinning, cut it off. If your foot, cut it off. Pluck out your eye. I said, whoa, wait a minute. I'm talking about them. Not me. Not me. As usual, and we're all Christians like this, as usual, we always kind of project God's teaching on everybody else. We like doing that because I always say, oh yeah, somebody needs to hear that message. But at the same time, it really comes back to us. And this is typical Jesus fashion. We want to talk about somebody else. Jesus says, what about you? What about you? If your hand is causing you to sin, cut it off. Foot, cut it off. Eye, pluck it out. And you're thinking, no, I'm not really doing that. And because that's pretty rough teaching. And yet at the same time, Jesus is saying, yes, I hold on to my own selfish wants, my own selfish needs, my own agenda so tightly that it's like my hand. I cannot imagine cutting off my hand, and at the same time, I can't even imagine letting go sometimes of my own selfish agenda as well. It's tough. This message is tough. St. James does not help at all. St. James just piles on here and says, come now, you rich. Now, I'd like to think it's the rich out there. No. It's us. Anything that we have treasured and stored, and I have my own treasure, my own store. I have my own rules, my regulations. I like the way I like things. And I kind of build up this world around me. I have, just these bins full of my own produce and stuff like this. And I have withheld from people. I'm not dealing with this person, or I just don't feel like dealing with this person. I have withheld things, and I hold on to things, or I hold on to well, I've only got so much to give, and we all kind of use that, well, I'm tired, no, I've only got so much to give. So, with that then, how do we deal with the themses? It's okay to be a them. It's okay to be an us. There's nothing wrong with that. It's okay to be in the tent. It's okay to be out of the tent. What's more important is how we deal with each other in and out of the tent. And that is important. And Jesus today challenges us very strongly. If you want to make the world better, and if you want to make these bridges between us and them, it always comes back to us. How do we follow Jesus? And what kind of person are we? In our readings today from St. James and from Mark, they're saying it is better for us to let it go and to share. And in that sharing and in that openness, we start building the bridges between us and them. And there's always going to be us and them. We're not going to end that. I'm not so bold as to say, we're all just going to group hug and we're all going to be fine. No, we're not. No, we're not. However, we can treat us and them a little bit better. And in doing so, we make the world more peaceable. But more importantly, too, when we start letting go of our own wants and needs and our own agenda and open our hearts to Jesus, then we realize through Jesus' message to all of us here that we all prophesy in God's name, and that is okay. And in doing so, we save our soul, and we make this world a lot better place for all of us to be in.